and aren't available, we're going to look at the importance of gratitude in giving and receiving. And feel free to chat to me privately if you have a question and want to do it that way. As we're looking at gratitude, and let's just put things in perspective for COVID right now, because it's really important for us. Working with children, I've been a special education advocate for years, done creative programs, and this has been a tough time for all of us. And so as we see some of the maturational challenges of kids, the social emotional, as well as learning challenges, then we can give them agency by giving them opportunities for gratitude, to show it to each other in the classroom, to our own children, nieces, nephews, whatever your family likes. I take a puppy that I adopted a year ago to the home improvement stores with me. They let him in, and I love children teaching him manners and helping me. So I'm grateful for those kids who've been raised and their parents who've been raising kids who know how to manage a dog, so I can continue with that work. And I just use that as a talking point as we're looking at things that, during COVID, there's some things that may have happened in your life that perhaps you've been grateful for. 52% of 18 to 29-year-olds moved home during COVID. That might have been true for you or your family members. And that may be have been challenging for you or your family members. Also, 10 million more people became caregivers. That's a 22% increase. And so you may be sort of gratitude frayed at this moment. Like, I love spending time with my mother, my parent, my mother-in-law, something like that, and Alma, being responsible for her in Arkansas. And yet we look at our friends who might be able to go out. So if we're comparing ourselves with others, and we lose our ability to see what's happening. There was also an old poem popular in the 70s. I think there was even a song recorded to it, of go placidly amid the noise and haste, and said, don't compare yourself with others, because you will become vain and bitter. And when we look at gratitude and its impact, we can consider also that, if we compare ourselves with others, if we get that bonus or something, we win the lottery, we do find that people who win the lottery, extrinsic motivation isn't as effective as intrinsic motivation. So we can look at our gratitude as a way to keep our intrinsic, our legacy in life going. So here's the definition. Gratitude is a cognitive affective state. So it's a being that is typically associated with the perception that one has received a personal benefit that was not intentionally sought after, deserved, or earned, but rather because of the good intentions of another person. So altruism, we know from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we need food, clothing, shelter, and then as we go up the sort of the pyramid to self-actualization, gratitude's a piece of it. We also know that from Dr. Martin Seligman's decades-long, probably going to sixth decade now, on happiness, gratitude is on his list of things that leads to happiness. And we also know that in communities where people live well to 100 cognitively, physically, it's not just their diet, whether it's Okinawa, Japan, or Yorba Linda, California, there's, a bunch of spots. They live in community. And if we look at what social psychologists theorize, that our ego needs, we need to be correct and right. We need to be in relationship. Gratitude keeps us in relationship with others. It also keeps us in relationship with ourselves, I think, really present, if we will. So, and please, as we go along, feel free to chat directly to me. chime in, if you will. We're not that big a group, so you can unmute yourself and just chat as you go along. If there's something that you have realized, maybe you're even grateful for COVID because you have some deeper understanding of yourself. Certainly, I did have my daughter, who was then 29, home during COVID. It was full of its challenges, and I could be grateful amongst those challenges. So it was a way to manage stress that we were all experiencing, that I was grateful that I got to have time with her in her adult life, which I wouldn't normally have had. She was living in Manhattan, very busy life. She still worked really hard. I could pull back the camera of the stress of having to work in a coat closet and all those little things, and meal prep and all the things that happens when families get together, and particularly as with different people reacting in different forms and fashions to the virus and the news of it, and what we needed to do. I could be grateful for her presence in that opportunity of time. Perhaps you have that as well. So we can internally be grateful, have gratitude, what we appreciate for ourselves. We know that better leadership, whether you're leading in a classroom or in a team, or your household or community, knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are, appreciating your strengths, even if you appreciate that you're dyslexic, like I am, maybe a little ADD. I've never been tested, but I can appreciate that I can handle situations really swiftly, be very resourceful, and that's just part of my wiring. So some of that impulsivity is a strength. I can be grateful that my friends call me Mom Guyver, or that's what my kids call me. And I can externally show gratitude to others by helping friends, particularly single parent friends, with mechanical systems in their household. So okay, I can appreciate that myself. So I want you to take a moment. You've committed to this time this evening of what do you appreciate about yourself? It may be something like, what would you want written in your obituary or said at your retirement speech? Or what do you want people to say that's true about you, and perhaps that you didn't even recognize as valuable as it was to others? So we can appreciate things in our life. I'm going to give you right now a practice that I have adapted from Dr. Martin Seligman, who I've talked about. I have a practice of going to bed at night saying, what went well today? Now we'll say, like right now in a few slides, we'll see, think of 10 things that you know you're thankful for. That may be too many. I find 3 really manageable when I'm going to bed, and it helps me sleep better, which also when I wake up in the morning, I could be grateful. Hey, I slept pretty well last night, or I fell asleep easily. So what went well? And it could be really small things. It could be, hey, I was able to run out and get a pizza and there wasn't any traffic or any problems, and I didn't get stuck in a thunderstorm. That's actually a whole bunch of things. It could be I got good news for my daughter or something like that, or I achieved something in landscaping in my yard. It could be big or small, but just what went well today. This is really important because we are biased to the negative. That is a self-preservation tool of our emotional system. That way we learn that that lovely bright red holly berry is going to make us sick, and the leaves are really prickly, and we're going to get injury if we try to pick those berries. So let's leave them alone and let them look pretty, or wear thick gloves and still not eat the berries. So we can appreciate things like that in our lives. So we have this negative power ball, if you will, that we remember things in the past, which can be protective. We can imagine things and threats in the future, which also could be protective. If we do it too much and we're not in the present, which gratitude really holds us in the present. It's a decision, it's a state, as our definition said, that we're doing right now, then we won't have the hormonal systems of adrenaline and cortisol going through our body, because our body doesn't know the difference and our mind doesn't know the difference. It reacts as if things, say an argument, a fight, some injustice we're concerned about in the past or worries in the future, our body, our mind reacts as if it's happening now. So we can also appreciate our surroundings in our lives. Yeah, I got a COVID puppy. Maybe you got an air fryer. Maybe you had a child, as the joke goes. Or maybe you got a puppy during COVID. I got a puppy. He wakes me up every morning. He's got a goofy face. He licks my face, and I can just appreciate that in the morning. And sometimes I appreciate his morning puppy snuggles. So I can appreciate that. I can appreciate this time of year, the green changing every day, seeing different flowers come out as I'm out and about. Even hearing kids playing outside, giggling and screaming, maybe graduation parties outside, particularly on a damp night like tonight. So what do others appreciate about us? We get affirmation. Now remember, the ego says we want to be correct, and we want to be in community that keeps us in relationship, makes us feel safe. We have someone have our back. So it's really useful to sort of know, and the gratitude where people say, thank you, and fill in the blank. Thank you, put your name in there, write it down now. They say, thank you, blank, you're so good at, and fill in the blank. Or thank you for helping me do blank. So we can look at what others appreciate in our lives, and we can see what is in our lives that makes us thankful. If you're raising children yourself, or even have that puppy, that the puppy didn't mess or chew anything up, while I'm on this webinar, I am thankful that the weather held off so I could do some things outside. What can you really focus on and get out of your internal mind thinking and reliving either past or perseverating about the future? So let's go on. What does a grateful person look like? So feel free to chat in here if you wish, what a grateful person looks like. Think of your grateful role model, if you will. I'm thinking of someone who recently passed away at nearly 100 years old, a friend, Aileen. She was tough. She was actually the purchasing agent for my school district for many, many years. Yet she was always grateful. She was grateful for help. She certainly supported others, whether it was in parenting or purchasing for their own lives. And her life was one full of integrity and authenticity, and a lot of pies as well. So think of your role model and write it down. And if you could chat it in with me, just do it to me privately. What does the grateful person in your life, what did they feel like? What did they look like? So just put in their name, or what was the kind of thing they did? Were they sharing? Was it your best friend in second grade who shared their peanut butter sandwiches when you got bologna sandwiches and you didn't like bologna, but you couldn't tell your mom or dad, whoever was making the sandwich? We are more positive when we're grateful. We see opportunity. And, if you've heard the statistics that people hear about a negative and remember a negative comment, certainly marketers pay attention to this, something negative gets carried on 10 times more than the positive thing. Once again, that's because that's protective, or is protective in our system. Like I was talking about, the we don't want to eat the holly berry. Yet if I'm not spending my life being super vigilant, and COVID has meant we have needed to practice a kind of vigilance, whether it's the COVID dosey-dose, staying 6 feet apart from other people, masking our vaccinations, things like that. It's certainly given us a lot to think about on a daily basis and process. If I can put myself in the space of gratitude, once again, I can manage my frustrations better. So I can manage the frustration that tools in the kitchen when I had my adult daughter home weren't put back in the same place. Even had her fiance with us for a while. I could appreciate that he cooked and they both cooked. They also made a mess. I could be grateful for the cooking and interesting conversations we had, even though that was really different than what my empty nesting life would have looked like. So there is a happiness. Once again, this is what Dr. Martin Seligman asked us to do. I paraphrased with what went well today as I go to sleep. So we have a confidence, if we're being vigilant, we are functionally unafraid. It's like in Dirty Dancing, that movie, nobody puts baby in the corner, where we're the ones putting baby in the corner. If I can interact and develop those relationships, because I'm a grateful person, I'm open, I carry myself differently, I definitely smile, which absolutely helps my ego because people respond to me affirmatively and with welcome. And I meet all sorts of people. So I could be proactive as well. Any comments or questions here as you're imagining or really capturing a person who just lives the life full of gratitude? So just unmute yourself. All right, I hear some muted, but I don't hear any conversation. So proactive, how can a grateful person end up being proactive? Well, it's really quite simple. If I am not perseverating about something, I'm not living in the past or in the future, I have all my brain, the 1/6 that does the heavy lifting and thinking, I have it available for me to imagine things, be creative, also appreciate that people think differently than I do. So I can be grateful for their different perspective rather than feel threatened by it. I can still, as they say in 12-step groups, take what I like and leave the rest. I don't have to feel like I'm shunned away from a group when I'm grateful. So that is that open-minded. Very specifically, we're not talking about tolerating other people. We are accepting them and accepting. I'm going to go back a slide as we look at the internal and external kinds of gratitude. This is something that happens as we get older. I can accept myself and my own shortcomings, and I can share my failures, my flops, my efforts with others without feeling ashamed of it. And that's really significant for relationship too, particularly leadership, if you will. So I'm ready to handle the challenges. I worked in a coat closet for 10 months. When I had my daughter home, I could handle our fighting for bandwidth by drilling a hole from the first floor to the second floor and running Ethernet cable so she could have, and we could all have, 3 of us, sometimes 4 of us working from home, have enough bandwidth without sweating the small stuff, if you will. So I'm preserving that 1/6 of my brain for the tasks at hand, for taking in other people's stories, and for seeing opportunities, particularly if I make a practice of asking myself or reminding myself at night what went well today. I'm reminding myself that a lot of things go well, and I'm accepting that some things won't, and put things in perspective. It's important to imagine, if you will, that when we are under stress, we micro focus, we lose our peripheral vision, we can't see the forest for the trees, or we can't see the gist of a situation. Grateful people look at a bigger perspective. They have a full horizon. And so they have more useful data and resources and comfort with themselves. So once again, if you have a person you're thinking in mind, and it could be a teacher who was grateful, it could be an elder in your family, a friend, a cousin, someone who you just go, wow, I want to be like them when I grow up, or I'd like to have more of their attributes in my life. I see the benefits, and maybe I'm reminding you of some of the reasons why people who are abundantly grateful do have those relationships and comfort in life. So I can express what's going well. And I can imagine it, and I can be thankful in the moment. A practice I've done during COVID, which has started kind of accidentally. We weren't going out very much in the beginning, right? When I went to the grocery store or the bagel store, or home improvement, I thanked those people at the checkout counters who were facing hundreds of people a day, maybe thousands, and maybe with a mask, not a mask, all that confusing information, particularly in the first month. And I thanked them for doing their job, and made a joke, and even showed gratitude that they might have stress and strain in their life because of their family members. And I also asked them, how's your family doing? I did have two people tell me that, yeah, I had a grandmother die, or someone else die in their family. I think that was important for them in the moment when we weren't having the normal grieving practices, if you will. And they always said thank you to me, because I'm not treating them like an interchangeable part. Once again, I want to be right according to my ego, and I want to be in relationship. I want to know that I'm in a community and people have my back. Now we can cultivate them. You may know someone, I have a few people I can think of who really just are gracious with gratitude. They can sort of float through the air, if you will. They go through life in a way that perhaps I have to work harder at. Maybe they work hard at it and I just don't see it. Maybe it's just because I'm impatient. I am on the impulsive spectrum of life. And so as I get older, I practice gratitude. I practice pacing myself. And that's really hard for me. So if we can cultivate gratitude, focusing our attention. I do want to mention a book that is tangential to this. However, for making practices of gratitude or being really present with yourself in life, and perhaps setting an attention to be more grateful, I recommend Into the Magic Shop by James Doty. That's D-O-T-Y, Into the Magic Shop. It's one of my favorite books because he was a poor kid in Los Angeles. And at 12 years old, he went to the magic store as he would to pass time. And he met the owner's mother, who taught him first how to breathe and stress manage through breath, how to meditate, and how to set intentions. He's now a Stanford neurosurgeon professor. You can see him on TED Talks and talks to Google and all sorts of other things. His research and how our mind works includes the neurosurgery piece of it, and the piece of how do we work best together. There's even a Harvard Business Review article about him, how screaming and scolding someone is not a way to teach people or get the best performance from them in the long run. So he cultivated that at 12 years old. He mastered it at 6 weeks and committed himself to it for the rest of life. He definitely had some detours and wrong turns. It's a really comfortable read, I think fascinating because he is a neurosurgeon. So he backs up his experience through this coincidental learning for which he's abundantly grateful. So how do we grow minute by minute? How do we grow in gratitude? Well, psychologists also know that we have all sorts of critical thinking errors, thinking traps that we do. And one is confirmation bias. So if we're really approaching our life as the world is out to get us and misery loves company, we find other people to join us in our misery at the moment or prolonged misery. We are going to find that we're going to feel good because the relationship piece, it's not going to be really healthy for us. However, if we commit ourselves to looking from everything from finding funny to being grateful over the little things such as not getting stuck in a thunderstorm, having an umbrella in the car when we do, then we can once again make it a practice. You are going to have to make this a practice to grow in gratitude. Where we focus our attention, where we look, is where we make growth. Gratitude is a universal emotion. Now, not all cultures are sort of altruistic giving to each other. Many cultures in the world still have, we might say, group restrictions. Maybe it's by religion or other. So they wouldn't have the type of structure we have where everybody, whatever religion or whatever, the local volunteer corps, the ambulance corps, the volunteer firemen, and 80% of firemen in this country are fire people, are volunteers. We go and tend to everybody's house if that's where the fire is. We don't say, are you a this or that? Are you part of my group or not? That's not true everywhere. So we have some unique perspective here and practices in the United States. However, thanking, if you've traveled to another country, we really try to learn please and thank you in the language we're going, or at the very least, we bow our head or we gesture thanks, we do arm gestures, and that's universal. Or as an old expression, it was a motto of my mother's high school, manners make it people. People like please and thank you, it's universal. Once again, it's treating people as they are meaningful individuals rather than interchangeable parts. So, someone want to chime in? I'll give a moment here for people to unmute and wait here. All right then, so we can become grateful people. I am absolutely aware, and I will concede, if you will, that when we become burned out, as some of us might be, from caregiving, from work, so we have reduced efficacy, we're exhausted, we're really cynical, so you're a wreck, REC. We live in the land of not being grateful. It's really hard to muster and see the good that's happening in life and to find joy or awe in our life. And so that may mean that that's a time, you certainly have Anthem EAP to help you, a time when you're really going to dip in and say, hey, I'm really playing those feel sorry for myself, breakup songs, I'm singing Carrie Underwood, take a Louisville Slugger and both tail lights, carve his name into the leather seats. Um, Maybe you're like Yosemite Sam from Looney Tunes, who's always angry, something like that. It can be a snowball effect for some of us, and it's a slippery slope. So we may live with that, and it could be hard to sort of climb out, climb up, and really embrace this higher attitude of being grateful. So when we have, and I hope I've sort of borne it out and not bored you, that gratitude has strong correlations to mental health, to positive relationships, more than optimism, positivity, love. Gratitude is key. Gratitude is an attitude. And it's not just a platitude, to go on with the alliteration. Certainly where we have contempt, perhaps the opposite of gratitude in a relationship, we know that relationship is really falling apart. I'm not finding anything good in the other person. This could be true at work. It could be true at our home. Contempt is really powerful. Usually it comes with either disdain or distrust. And so we can see that someone might be on the receiving end of abuse from that, or may be an abuser themselves, and dispensing vitriol, spitting nastiness. It's poisonous and corrosive if we're not embracing gratitude. You know, we teach our children very young, please and thank you. Our mental health, more than saying you win or get a trophy to children, just thanking them when they're helping you, whether they're helping you clean up, doing household tasks. That's going to be first extrinsically motivating to them. They want to please you. They want to see your smile as a caregiver or adult in their world. And on we go to a positive cycle. You know, many hands make light work if we're in a family system or a classroom system. Michelle Borba, that's Borba, Michelle Borba, in her book Thrivers, why some people or children grow up to thrive and others don't. That was published in 2021, so it does have some COVID references. She's a psychologist who has long looked at children and what are the key points that allows some kids to thrive. Gratitude, empathy, curiosity, grit, resilience, they all start playing together and make a mechanism in which kids can take correction. They grow up to be able to face failure or making mistakes without feeling, zero sum, I'm no good. And our gratitude, when we show interest, another noted psychologist in a class I took was saying, where we show interest, where a child has interest, that is a kind of gratitude to them. We're appreciating their point of view. We're appreciating their perspective, how their mind or interest is wired. And that is it creates resilient people who develop in their little bodies and minds competence through self-competence. If I can step out of my own self and say thank you to someone, I am going to be self-confident because they're going to think I'm okay and nice at the very youngest levels. So we can foster it, nurture it, spread it around like fertilizer, if you will, with sincerity. So we do know our ears will pick up false body language. Oh, thank you. No, we can see that. So we could do the words of gratitude and it still can be cynical. And that's not going to be what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about sincere gratitude. So it is contagious. just like, misery loves company, where we create a culture of gratitude and if you will, appreciation. We've got to appreciate that somebody either did something for us or we're grateful for what we have, how we think, the people who can help us, whatever inventory you're being grateful for. Once again, I am going to feel safer with you or with the people who are grateful. They are open, they are welcoming, they'll be smiling. I am going to feel safer. I am going to have the capacity to be curious, compassionate, and have self-esteem as well, confidence and competence. So it works because we lower stress hormones. So let's look at what happens when we get stressed out. You may have heard of the amygdala, the little almond-shaped thing in the middle of our brain, and we have a amygdala hijack. Maybe you heard about that in psychology. And that's our fight, flight, or freeze part of our brain. Well, that when it gets triggered, and it could get triggered by a memory or as in panic attacks about something that's we're worried about in the future. So once again, our mind doesn't know the difference between now, past, or present. If we're anxious or worried or upset, it will react as if the event that we're imagining or remembering is happening now. So if I have an amygdala hijack, let's say a panic attack, and I'm on a train, this happened to me once. I knew what was happening to me. I still was having a panic attack. It had a huge amount of change. And my stress hormones started going on, cortisol and adrenaline. We feel flush. We might feel like throwing up, or we might have diarrhea, have a loose bowel movement or the urge. That's because our body is getting the signal digestion isn't important now. We have to have our blood flow go to other places so we can fight, flight, or freeze. Also, what happens is some of that adrenaline and cortisol goes into our saliva. It tastes like metal. You ever tasted baby vitamins full of iron? The babies spit them out. It tastes like metal. And then we could see what happens sort of naturally. Maybe some of us, we have gained weight in COVID because we've stress eaten. We've eaten comfort food. If I have something that tastes like metal in my mouth, I'm either going to lose my appetite because food doesn't taste good, or I'm really going to want those comfort foods that are fat, salty, and sweet, or a combination of those things. So we can understand our stress eating during COVID or before or after. If I am grateful and I can regulate, I can see my options, I have a community supporting me, all because of my relationships with others and feeling like, okay, I have options, I have community, I'm going to be like those people living to 100. I am going to have lower stress hormones. I'm not going to have as much adrenaline and cortisol going through my body. And even, we find in people who have post-traumatic stress, I know my heart rate variability is I could get excited, I could get startled, and my heart rate is going to settle down to a normal heart rate swiftly. Those who've had a traumatic stress experience and are still having PTSD experiences, what we find is that their heart rate goes really high and it stays really high for a longer time. That's really hard on your body, as is poor eating habits, which can lead to hardening of the arteries or other vascular issues, type 2 diabetes, poor sleep, things like that. So gratitude, because of its interaction with all other aspects of our life, can sort of spare us the fight, flight, or freeze response, or help us if it's a practice, recover ourselves when we feel like we're having a panic attack. Now, once again, you may need some cognitive behavioral therapy, some DBT, some counseling to help you get gratitude as a bigger piece of your practice. So once again, I remind you that you have such services through your EAP. But then once again, we can see that gratitude can lessen our depression. I don't feel worthless. I don't feel alone. I feel in community, even if it's an introvert scale of community. So I get my energy by being with one person or a book or maybe 3 people. I don't like going to bars or big groups. You know, many people have learned about where they are on an introversion scale during COVID. So I can be alone and not feel lonely. I can have fond memories that might even put a smile on my face, even though no one's looking at me. Once again, I'm going to feel happier, more satisfied, more connected with the world, less alone, and that can help me be physically more stronger. And also in the sense, as Michelle Borber writes about grit, resilience, curiosity. I preserve that 1/6 of my brain for all sorts of other activity rather than taking inventory of past wrongs or what I don't have. So that's important. Now, journaling can be really useful. I think if you're trying to recover, like your English teacher said, right? Who, what, why, where, when, how. If you're a worrier and you really want to get to a practice of better gratitude, I'm going to encourage you, and you really need to preserve your sleep, do your worry journal writing earlier in the day. Avoid doing it right before bed because it's going to sort of feed the perseverant, the hamster wheel thinking. Can I just say to myself, I could write in my journal what went well today. I just say it to myself in my mind as a practice. If I'm having thoughts, if I realize I'm sort of a victim mindset of myself and beating myself up, I'm not internally being grateful for what I do and even recovering from mistakes or learning to ask for help. Some of us need to do that. We may have been really praised for being super independent. It's not working so well at work or in our household. Whatever it is, ask yourself what and how questions as you're journaling. Avoid asking yourself questions like, why did I do that? I'm so stupid. Or write those if that's your first thought, then go back and edit it. Be your own life coach, teacher, and see how the choruses, the words you're using. Are you using words like I'm being hammered, slammed? Those guys, someone should, really helpless and victim words. Edit those words out. And once again, appreciate what's grateful. Challenge the premise of your own questions. Open up your framework and allow room for other ideas and insights to come in. So we can take stock of where we have been. It could be as we get older, we get better at saying, yeah, I made a mistake. So some of you who may be recovering perfectionists, you could be grateful that you had an opportunity to learn today, whether it's a child or someone corrected you, or you corrected your own behavior rather than rushing. You slowed down. That's always one for me. So take stock. So I could be grateful that I did some tasks and activities safely or more safely than would have been my normal impulse. So take stock of your strengths and your weaknesses and be grateful that your weaknesses can be strengths. I'll say that again. Your weaknesses can be strengths because those are the things you can understand in others that can be hard, and you may be better at teaching them because you have learned how to do those things. I was in a performance and there were some little kids there, mostly adults were there. And there was a basket of quiet toys, including little party Play-Dohs. And I gave them to the 2 little girls who were probably 4 and 6. And I told them I could never sit still very long unless my hands were busy. I could be grateful for that, and certainly the parents were grateful to me. So I can see the big picture, imagine others approach with that curiosity that is so engaging with 4 and 5-year-olds. So I can look at the value of our journaling. You know, the most profound efforts or expressions of gratitude are those where we do not have it transactional. Maybe we say thank you, however, we're not trying to get something out of it. A person to hear in a podcast forum is Doug Conant, that's Conant, on the Brene Brown Dare to Lead podcast. That's Brene Brown. Many of you have probably heard of her work on shame and research her Dare to Lead podcast. Doug Conant is fascinating because he wrote tens of thousands of thank you notes as a CEO of Nabisco and then Campbell Soup. Maybe I have the order wrong. And to a person, he wrote it, whatever he heard about them, he'd do it on his commute. Now, granted, he had a driver, so that may be a little harder for us. The point is, he hand wrote thank you notes. And up and down the administration, the factory floor, what have you. And those thank you notes were so meaningful to the people who received them, the tens of thousands. I think it was like 30,000 he wrote in his career, that people would show up and meet him, and they'd still have those thank you notes in their wallet. So that's really powerful to think about. You know, we might say thank you in an email, we might say a quick thanks in passing. Really do think about, as far as creating a culture in your own home or community or workplace in Stamford, that a written thank you note, it could be on a Post-it, so it doesn't have to be, you know, a $5 Hallmark card. Thank you. Manners maketh man. Where we felt disconnected, having something we can hold of thanks. I have a thank you note here above my lamp. I made something for a young woman I knew as a child, and she's getting married. I sewed something for her. And I just keep the thank you note. It makes me smile before I do my presentation. So think of the power of the thank you note. Our words, what we edit to ourselves, once again, if we say should, always, never, you know, I'm being hammered, slammed, really sort of conned. There's all sorts of words. If we look at them, if other people are saying them to us, we can edit them out, see them for what they are. That is someone else's energy. If we're living with gratitude, you might say, not my pig, not my farm. Create some boundaries to keep yourself well, or you may just not accept the premise of the question. Even when people say, this will never work, let's be specific. What do we need? What do we have as resources to make something work, a new system or something like that? And so you can keep going and peaceful. We know how powerful calm is to a group, and leadership, or being a leader within. Calm to the group preserves everybody's creative mental space and thinking, because they're not in a cortisol-induced fight, flight, or freeze system. So here's the activity that says 10 things you are grateful right now. You could do 10. You could do the 3 W's, what went well today, right now. Think about how you can make it a practice. If you want to put it on your bulletin board, have a gratitude buddy, if you will. Start meetings or start your classroom or something like that with what are we grateful. It could even be silly, something that makes you giggle, even reflecting back to stuff that happened in 2020. You know, we could say COVID is the worst thing ever. Well, not necessarily. So are there things, as I said, I was grateful to have my daughter home in spite of all the challenges that presented. I learned how to cook some different foods and many, many other things. So we can open up our perspective, see opportunities in our life with gratitude. Once again, we can see the forest and the trees. How can I be of service? Can I be grateful enough that I'm willing to pick up trash? Can I be grateful enough that I take time, just 2 minutes, to write a thank you, post it to someone, maybe a postcard, send it to them, share a joke or a giggle just because I appreciate. I've worked with teenagers for many, many years, and I have my own sense of humor and wit, including some from a lot of old movies and songs. Whenever a teen laughed, I'd say thank you for laughing, because they were in communion and community with me. So can we give compliments to others? We tend to, our 4-year-olds laugh 400 times a day. They're making mistakes all the time, and they manage to laugh and be silly, and we teach them to say thank you. Do we say it? Do we think it? Do we need to make it a practice? Speaking of doctors here, we absolutely know healthcare has been so strained during COVID, as well as education and municipal governments. When I go to my doctor's office, I always say to the staff at the admitting desk or what have you, thank you. I could not do your job. I am speaking the truth because I would make a mess of it. It would just be too hard for me, being dyslexic, and even just sitting still would be a challenge for me. In fact, my doctor's office, the front personnel were navigating a really challenging patient who was a grumbly, unhappy person, or at least at that moment in the office. And after I had my appointment, which they were fitting me in for an emergency, I went to the bakery down the road and came back and gave them thanks, because they were managing a challenging situation so well. It made me feel good, even though the woman was still complaining. They were super professional. So I just brought them a box of cookies. So we can do that as well. Choose your words about yourself. Look at words like should, always, and never. Should is a challenging word. Now, you should unplug appliances, the toaster, not stick a fork in it, unplug electric appliances before you try to clean or service them. That's a safety thing. Plenty of other shoulds are really someone else's values, and they are likely to be different from yours. You are unique. So really look at the words that you're receiving from others, and just put the framework and be mindful, particularly if you have a challenge with preserving your self-esteem, if you're feeling burned out, if you're vulnerable in some place. Your self-soothing techniques. Into the Magic Shop talks about your breathing and meditation. There's a somewhat similar book, 10% Happier by Dan Harris, who was a CBS correspondent. He was anchor. He was a war correspondent. He had panic attacks on TV as he was anchoring, and he realized he was both a substance and adrenaline junkie. He felt really, adrenaline makes you feel really alive, also substance addicted. And he, with a skeptic's point of view, pursued leaders in meditation, and he is committed to it now. So Dan Harris is another person like James Doty. You might find his work interesting, autobiographical. Keep a kindness journal, curiosity, what went well, call it what you will, so you may make it a separate book, or you may put it, write an email to yourself and have your own folder in your Gmail. It could be pictures. Some of us think visually more than in words. So if there are things that bring you joy, awe, certainly nature, children laughing, I find animal pictures in certain poses, I capture them. because they just make me grateful for the abundance in the world. Gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. Melody Beatty. Also, if we're looking about sort of historical survival, if you will, both Viktor Frankl and Elie Wiesel, who were interned in World War II prison camps, could tell who was not going to survive in those situations. It was people who were giving and had gratitude amongst horrible circumstances that survived. Those who were vigilant and protective did not survive. I want you to capture this evaluation code, screenshot it if you will, hold your phone up to catch it. Evaluations of me is important, and of our content as well. We're going to let you see that you have your Anthem EAP, stands for Employee Assistance Program. It is more than counseling. I've mentioned counseling for you and your household. So if you do have an adult child living under your roof, if you're trying to help Aunt Alma in Arkansas as the elder caregiver coordinator of that, you can take advantage of our services. They are abundant. And I just want to leave a couple minutes for people. You could unmute yourself and ask comments or questions, other resources that I have. I have more to share than I have time today.
That was excellent. Thank you so much for your time. I certainly gained a lot and learned a lot and could relate to many of the items you have mentioned. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anyone have any thoughts, any questions? We are going to make a copy of this presentation and I will post it on the Stamford Public School website. So if anyone wants to go back and listen to it again or share it with anyone, it will be on our webpage probably by next week.
And I do want to remind you, really encourage you, share the gratitude of having Anthem. So please check out the website. Most people are surprised by how much there is available to support you, so you can stress less, so you can live with deeper, richer gratitude and have those relationships that make you feel safe and secure in a challenging time.